Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Patriot Nation TV. I'm your host, Tim Davis, aka Professor X. One man, one opinion. Trying to make sense of it all. It is Monday, June 14th, 2021. And there's a lot to talk about. A lot of things happened in the last week. There's like three major things I want to talk about. Two major things, and I didn't know which one to do, so I did a coin flip. The two things I wanted to talk about was Tyrants, Tyranny, and the Second Amendment, and liberalism, or progressive liberalism, equals fascism. So I had two shows prepared to do, and I wasn't really sure which one I wanted to do. So I took a quarter, I did a coin flip, and it landed on Tyranny and Tyrants and the Second Amendment. So that's what I'm going to do tonight. And so let me start off by saying this. For all you out there listening, you know that thing inside your head that keeps you from saying stuff you probably shouldn't? For obvious reasons. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Well, mine's broken. It really is. Mine's broken. I don't care. I'll put the bullseye on my back. Unfiltered. One man, one opinion. I'm going to say it the way I see it. And brings me to Tyranny and Tyrants and the Second Amendment. So first, let me start off by saying this. I am not a Republican. I'm definitely not a Democrat. Never was, never will be. I am not a Republican. I am a constitutional conservative. I believe in God, family, and country. God, family, and country in that order. So with that being said, I got to say I align myself with the great Justice Antonin Scalia, who I believe was murdered, when he said this. Number one, I don't believe in the Wilson doctrine of a living, breathing document, the Constitution. I do align myself with Antonin Scalia. And this is what he said. The Constitution that I interpret and apply is not living, but dead. Or as I prefer to call it, enduring. It means today, not what current society, much less the court, thinks it ought to mean, but what it meant when it was adopted. Antonin Scalia. That's what he said. So before I move further on into this little broadcast I'm doing, there's a quote out there, a famous quote out there, a very famous quote out there. I mean, I used it back in 2010, 2012, many times. Around 2013, I really delved into it and found out that I was misquoting a quote that everybody quotes. And the quote is that they say it was from Cicero, 43 BC. Cicero did write something close to it, but it's not the actual quote. The quote that I'm going to say, and many of you out there heard it before, but it wasn't quoted. It wasn't written and quoted by Cicero. It was written by a woman named Taylor Caldwell in a book that she wrote, A Pillar of Iron. The title, A Pillar of Iron. And the quote I'm taking out of that book is this. And many of you heard it before. So it starts off like this. A nation can survive its fools, and even the ambitious, but it cannot survive treason from within. An enemy at the gates is less formidable, for he is known and carries his banner openly. But the traitor moves amongst those within the gate freely. His sly whispers rustling through all the alleys, heard in the very halls of government itself. For the traitor appears not a traitor. He speaks the accents familiar to his victims and wears their face in their arguments. He appeals to the baseness that lies deep in the hearts of all men. He rots the soul of a nation. He works secretly and unknown in the night to undermine the pillars of the city. He infects the body politic so that it can no longer resist. A murderer is less to fear. That's the quote. Taylor Caldwell, which many people misquote for Cicero. And that does apply to today, what we're seeing now. It's true. It's happening before us all. So, as I go further into this little rant I have, we've seen, I don't even want to say his name, the guy that's up for vote for in charge of the the ATF guy wants to be in charge of it all. He's responsible for Waco, Texas, Ruby Ridge, etc., etc. He doesn't even know what an assault weapon is or assault rifle is. I'm not going to even say his name to bring attention to myself. But this is what I'm going to say. I got two messages I want to say. One is to Congress, House, Senate politicians, judges, and officers, law enforcement. So one man, one opinion, speaking for myself, and I believe I'm speaking for about 130 million Americans who are pro-Second Amendment, who own roughly 350 to 400 million firearms legally, and possess around 12 trillion rounds. So let me start off. Let me go by this. If I was one man, one opinion is going to address Congress, this is what I would say to them. Hopefully I can speak for everybody else. I don't know. You tell me. Leave a comment. Tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me where I'm right. Also hit like and subscribe. I always got to say that. So as one man, one opinion, if I had to sit down in front of Congress and address our grievances, like the First Amendment allows me to do, this is what I would say. Dear members of Congress, in regards to any attempt to disarm Americans, whether it be through unconstitutional laws, backroom deals, strong-arm tactics, or UN treaties, we, the people, will not obey. Our founders warned us about you and wrote the Second Amendment with you in mind. As much as you would like us to think otherwise, the Second Amendment was written for a single purpose: to defend our freedom and liberties from tyrants in power. It's not about hunting. It's not about gun clubs, collecting. It's not about any of that. The Second Amendment was written for a single purpose: to defend my liberties, your liberties, my freedom and your freedom from tyrants in power. It's a fact. Not even debatable. That brings me to a couple debates I've had over the years, actually a decade, over and over and over. It's like it's like a circular debate. Whether it's statists, whether it's so-called conservatives that agree with me 98% of the time, but where we butt heads as law enforcement or military or whatever you want to call it. We always butt heads when it comes to certain things. And I call them statists, commonly known as bootlickers. And so you always get the argument. You always get the silly argument about how police, or military are the only ones that have to have certain firearms or any arms to that effect. And I always say this to them. If you're suggesting, even Congress, friends on Facebook, which I'm still in Facebook jail, friends, co-workers, relatives, in-laws, just anybody in particular, I always say this to them. If you are suggesting sending men with weapons of war to take my weapons, my alleged weapons of war, then I am fairly certain that's what's called an act of war and a definition of tyranny, which coincidentally is the reason for the Second Amendment in the first place. That's why the Second Amendment was written. So I'm talking to you, Republicans, conservatives, because the liberal wackadoos doesn't really. I'm not talking to them. I'm talking to you, so-called conservatives, classical liberals, or libertarians. If you cannot see the tyranny in having a gun ban enforced by men with guns, then you fail to understand why the Second Amendment was written in the first place. You really do. Remember, all gun control must be enforced by gun violence. Just a fact. History proves this. Also, I must add, in case you didn't know, or in case you forgot, the purpose of the United States Constitution is to limit the power of the federal government, not the American people. That's the purpose of it. So we got to ask ourselves as individuals, not this collective kumbaya, liberal nonsense, buffoonery, how much longer are we going to allow, how much longer are we the people going to let 535 people tell 330 million people in a faraway capital what to do? Remember, they work for us. We pay them. Taxation without representation. We pay them. They take an oath to protect and preserve the Constitution, and they, excuse my language, shit on it. It's a fact. It's not even an opinion, it's a fact. So this brings me to the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment. Pardon me for 1 second. The Second Amendment. So I'm going to break it down to the 5 things of the Second Amendment and what it actually means. So let me start off by saying, let me read the Second Amendment. And it goes like this. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It's one paragraph. One paragraph of the Second Amendment. So I'm going to break it down to each section. There's 5 sections of that paragraph. And what do I mean by that? Okay, start off with number 1. A well-regulated militia. And I'm going off what the founders wrote in the Federalist Papers, Anti-Federalist Papers, and so on and so on. A well-regulated militia. A militia, when properly formed, are in fact the people themselves, whose ability to act in both personal and common defense must be well maintained, being necessary to the security of a free state. What does that mean? Secure and personal liberty, the state being free, and the governance of free people, the state securing the rights of a free people. 3, the right of the people. What does that mean, the right of the people? The whole of the people, an individual right, independent of government. 4, to keep and bear arms, to own and carry arms of whatever type necessary to effectively provide for personal defense and defense against tyranny, shall not be infringed. Shall not be infringed. Shall not be limited, regulated, federally, excessively taxed, or encroached upon in any manner. That's the Second Amendment. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, comma, the right of the people, comma, to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. You can interpret it whatever way you want. That's in black and white for a 5th grader to understand. And that's just the way it is. For all those people out there who are confused, or, pardon me again, people. For all those out there, for all those who don't understand the meaning of rights, I need to make it clear once and for all. Me, one man, one opinion. We need to make it clear once and for all. The Second Amendment does not apply to semi-automatic rifles, nor does it apply to bolt-action rifles, pistols, or revolvers. The Second Amendment restricts government. The technology of firearms is irrelevant. The restrictions on government remain the same, regardless of the firearm. The Second Amendment was not written to grant permission for citizens to own and bear firearms. It forbids government interference in the right to keep and bear arms, period. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. This also applies to other rights. First Amendment, 4th, 3rd, 6th, 7th. Most importantly, which is neglected the most, is the 9th Amendment. This also applies to other rights. They are not granted. They stipulate inherent rights that the government may not prohibit. So you got to look back to when all these amendments and the Constitution was written. Go back to 1791. When the Second Amendment was written, every gun was a military-style type gun, or firearm, whatever you want to call it. Every arms, cannons. People had cannons. So in 1781, when the Second Amendment was written, every gun, every arms was a military-style grade. So this brings me to we the people. Under compromise, under let's do what's right for society, kumbaya, whatever you want to call it. Started around in the 1930s. You know, you hear people say, gun owners need to compromise. I say, phooey, hogwash. Gun owners need to compromise? Really? Let's bring it back to where it all started. 1934, the National Firearms Act, infringement. 1968, the Gun Control Act, infringements. 1986, Firearm Owners Protection Act, another infringement. Government gets bigger, taxes rise, government makes money off of it. 1993, the Brady Handgun Violence Act, another buffoonery. More buffoonery. Infringement means nothing. The 1994 assault weapons ban, after a 10-year study, proved it was irrelevant and was nonsense. Then the 1995 Gun-Free Zone Act. 1995, the Gun-Free School Zone Act. There's been more gun shootings in the last 10, 15 years in schools than the last 230 years of the United States, the existence of the United States. Bottom line is this, folks. We have compromised enough. No more infringements. There was approximately 150 million Americans who own and possess legal firearms. There is estimated 350 to 400 million firearms in circulation with approximately 12 trillion rounds. If legal gun owners were a problem, I think you would know it. There's nothing anybody can do about it. It's not the gun owners, it's the tyrants and the tyranny that they're posing on the people. So I say this. We have compromised enough. No more infringements. No more. Can't do it anymore. I mean, I can go on and on. With Supreme Court cases that validate my argument. But I'm going to go to something that was passed in Congress. Many of you may not know of it. Many of you may know of it. It's called the Dick Act. Yes, D-I-C-K. The Dick Act of 1902. And it cannot be repealed. Gun control is forbidden, regardless what these tyrants may state. Protection against tyrannical government. The Dick Act of 1902, also known as the Efficiency of Militia Bill H.R. 11654 of June 28, 1902, invalidates and makes null and void all so-called gun control laws. Look it up, people. The Dick Act of 1902 makes all gun laws null and void, besides the Second Amendment, which is in plain English. All members of the militia have the absolute personal right and Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms of any type, and as many as they can afford to buy. That's just a fact. What I find funny, and what a lot of you so-called freedom-loving, liberty-loving people out there should find funny also, is how every government, including the U.S. government throughout history, tells the people that violence and weapons are not the answer. Yet, they use violence and weapons to enforce every rule, every law, and every unconstitutional law, and every infringement on our Second Amendment. That's just what it is. So, I guess that's Congress, members of government need to know this. People, you need to know this. So this brings me to our law enforcement. My little message to all law enforcement out there, whether you're federal, state, village, county. You have made a lot of mistakes. You have made a lot of mistakes, especially post 9/11, that many cannot forgive. But now more than ever is the line being drawn in the sand for you. You are given oppressive orders under the guise of public safety, COVID-19, stuff like that, suspicious activity, 9/11. You have been given oppressive orders under the guise of public safety and security to remove people from their homes, from their churches, and to provide security for quarantine centers. You must first understand that you do not have to follow these orders or those orders. It didn't work out for the Nazis. It didn't. It didn't work out well for them in the Nuremberg trials. I get it. We won the war. We read the history. I'm not for defunding the police. I support you guys. I really do. But I get it. You're losing the public. The public's turning on you because you're following a fascist system. You're following orders because your union tells you to. You got qualified immunity and so on and so on. But you don't have to do it. So when you start removing people from their houses, arresting pastors and parishioners from churches because of COVID-19, and removing people from their homes to provide quarantine centers, you don't have to follow these orders. Use your brain. Use your brain and conscience. Use your common sense, officers. Use it. You don't have to be labeled a conspiracy theorist nowadays to not trust our government or our law enforcement narrative. Don't allow your top brass, your union representatives, to do your thinking for you. You, officers, took that oath to protect and preserve the Constitution. So please, don't allow your top brass, your union reps, do your thinking for you. Understand that if you do these oppressive acts, you personally and your units will be declaring war on your own people. And we see it every day. I see it. Don't allow it. You're declaring war on your own people for a paycheck, for a pension, under the guises of safety and security. Enough's enough. So I guess that's my little rant. I've been on, 29 minutes. Like I said, everyone, just one man, one opinion. Just one man, one opinion. And like I said earlier about my statement, you know that thing inside your head? That thing inside your head that keeps you from saying stuff you probably shouldn't and wisely shouldn't? Yeah, mine's broken. And I'm going to say it. I love my country. I support my law enforcement. I support my military. I love my God. I love my family. And I love every one of you. But enough's enough. We are teetering on something that no one's prepared for. So with that, I'm going to end my show, my little rant. As I always do, I'm going to say God bless. God bless you. God bless America. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.